Ever wonder what it's like being in a band that releases music on your own record label, which happens to also be one of the all-time best underground and hard rock labels on the globe? We'll find out now as we chat with Mirror Queen guitarist, vocalist, and TP Records owner Kenny Sehgal right here on Aftershocks. Aftershocks Tremors, we're back with another episode, and we've got a really cool one for you folks today, as our guest is not only the guitarist vocalist for New York's 70s proto-inspired outfit, Mirror Queen, but he's also the head honcho at one of the hard rock's most iconic independent record labels, TP Records. Mr. Kenny Sehgal, a.k.a. Kenny Kreiser, joins us today. What's up, Kenny? How are you, man? Thanks for coming on.
Yep, glad to join you. Got a pretty day, the beginning of summer, right?
Absolutely. That's right, man. Yeah, right in middle early July here, we're getting ready to kick off things. Absolutely, man. Well, let's get to it, Kenny, man. Mirror Queen, you guys just put out your brand new full-length Inviolate. It's out now on TP. The band's fourth LP, first one in 5 years. And, you know, for anyone who's obviously a fan of the band, they're definitely going to notice there's definitely some sonic differences between Inviolate and the band's previous releases, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But, you know, first, let's discuss a bit about the recording of the record, which I read was like a lot of records that are coming out now. It was a pandemic delayed record. And the interesting thing about Mirror Queen is that you guys wrote a song in 2015 called Quarantined. I don't know if that has if that's clairvoyant in any way or something, but I mean, you know, so did you guys have the record done and ready by around 2020? Talk about the record and how good it feels to finally get it out there right now.
Yeah, it was nearly done. And then we just kind of delayed the final polishing touches because we knew there was no tours coming up, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I remixed the title track. We actually expanded the track, made it longer, and tinkered in the studio a little bit.
Okay.
I tend to do things in stages. We tend to put down basic tracks, like 3 songs, then we finish those, and we practice the next batch, and then we kind of progress that way. In this case, we were pretty much to the mixing stage. But then since we had the time, there was no hurry to put it out.
Mm-hmm.
We did a little bit of tinkering, but nothing too much. It's a pretty straightforward record, not a whole ton of overdubs or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just pretty much life got in the way, and then we knew there was no touring. So
sure.
Yeah. Waiting on the artwork. Also knew that production would take forever to get the vinyl pressed. You know how that
That's
is.
true. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
So not a total pandemic record, in that it wasn't written and recorded completely during the pandemic, but it was affected.
Okay, very cool. Well, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I hear a big difference on the sound on this record compared to your previous releases in terms of the style. I think one of the best attributes really to Mirror Queen is that each album you guys have put out over the years is very different. I mean, they're all in the same vernacular, but there's always differences, I feel, that really keep things fresh. On this record, one of the biggest things I noticed is that there's very little to no sort of Sabbath, stoner rock inspired riffs or anything like that on the record. To me, it's really sort of a progressive proto sort of new wave of British heavy metal inspired record. You know, BOC, UFO, Captain Beyond, that kind of style.
That's definitely there.
Yeah.
I mean, the very beginning of a track on side one, Devil Seeks Control, that's pretty Sabbathy. But probably the difference is that this is the first time where we've had the same lineup for 2 records in a row.
Okay.
So Morgan McDaniel joined for kind of an overlooked record we did, Verdigris, 2017. And he and I pretty much share all the main songwriting duties. We all chip in, you know. But whoever comes up with the core of the kernel of the tune, we're pretty 50-50 on that. And now 2 records in a row with Morgan being full-fledged. So to me, that's probably the key.
The key. Okay.
And knowing what we're doing a little bit more.
Sure. Sure. It makes sense. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk.
We're getting a little proggier, I think. But poppier as well. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say there are some subtle pop elements in those some of those tracks too. Now, vocally, you know, on this record, very well balanced in terms of, you know, when you go high, when you go low on your parts. Yeah, like for instance, on some of the less metallic tracks, like Inside an Icy Light and Sea of Tranquility, vocals have more of that Buck Dharma vibe, being a little bit higher and lighter in pitch and tone. Whereas I think on tracks like, you know, my favorites, which you just mentioned before, The Devil Sees Control and A Rider on the Rain, really has more of that deeper Rod Evans sort of edge to it, a lot more gruff. So talk about how you go about approaching your vocals, on how it fits in each song or what it calls for. I mean, do you know going into each track what you're going to do vocally, or do you sort of experiment to see what fits before you make that decision?
Experiment in the practice studio, and then pretty much bang it out recording studio. But again, if you don't like clean vocals, you're gonna hate us.
Sure. Sure, yeah.
We have no ambition to be heavy or even aggressive, to be honest. I like to say that me and Morgan and the guys, we have massive virtual record collections, so we just toss everything in there. And lately, for this band, it's tending to be more prog and new album kind of stuff, and 70s, of course. We're not retro. I would take umbrage if someone said we were.
Sure. No. Yeah.
That's more to me fashion than it is music. Retro.
I agree.
But we're digging in what works and the pop sense, you know, kind of keeps it clean. We might have funny arrangements, but there can often be identifiable verse and chorus. You know what I mean? Just in heavy rock, sometimes you think another chorus is coming up, you run to a guitar solo.
Yeah.
Key change. You know, that's how I like.
Throw them off. Yeah.
You know, so there's your Gap Beyond and BOC and all that. You know.
Sure. Absolutely, man. Yeah.
And we really adore a lot of the prog bands. Wishbone Ash has, you know, they're not super prog, but clean vocals, and we're nuts about Camel, and that's very, very clean. And there are melodic pop arrangements hidden in all that prog, I believe.
Sure. Yeah,
probably
absolutely.
the same stuff that Maiden listened to, but we're just we haven't gone into the metal realm as much. You know?
Sure. Yeah. No, here. Well, there's still some. I mean, you can definitely still hear some, you know, Maiden's, you know, influence here and there, a little bit here and there. Not, you know, not all over the place, but there's some elements in there. Yeah.
Again, I think it's just looking back, instead of Maiden having only, you know, 20 years of real electric guitar rock to look back on, or even if they were sneaking to bars in 1973, like 5 years of heavy rock. We have decades to pick and choose and throw it into the pot, you know?
True.
So a lot of their influences are the same, and I thought the 80s sucked, so, except for early 80s. So for heavy rock, you know, then. And if grunge, I'm not sure if there's any influence of that in here. I think Morgan's too young. The rest of the guys don't give a shit. I caught a lot of guitar bands in the 90s. I was glad it was back, but I'm not sure where the influence might be popping up. I'm sure it's there somewhere, you know?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, let's talk about Morgan real quick. You've been bringing him up, you know, as I was alluding to earlier, the band's sound really has progressed, I think, since he came into the fold, you know, for the last 2 records. It's definitely taking you guys from, you know, maybe more of a stoner based band to something entirely unique now with what I've heard over the last 2 records. So talk about his addition and, you know, how important he's been not only to the band sound, but really to you as the vocalist too, and being the other guitar player. How is it having a guy like that who can do what he can do in the guitar? How easier does it make it for you to focus on what you need to do, obviously, up there on stage?
Yeah, pretty easy. I think we're in sync stylistically, even though he's like 20 years younger. He's from here. New York, I mean, not Milford.
Sure.
I'm coming to you people from Milford, Pennsylvania right now. You might have missed the prelude. So he's from New York. He's had family that's been in 80s and 90s bands. I think he has an uncle that was in Prong and maybe even Helmet for a little bit.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Then things kind of go in cycles, I believe. So he, like me, has no sense of irony. So we take it to the past. We're not trying to turn upside down or take the piss, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so he really loves BOC, and he's even guitar tech for them, you know?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Things like that. So he's immersed in New York. Super talented young guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is like you can see it in the audiences too, especially in Europe. There's a new breed of people that are into not older rock, that'd be the retro thing I'm talking about, but older styles, or just mixing it all together, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no irony, not a whole lot. They're not
Mm-hmm.
poking fun at it. They're listening to it honestly, and it's pretty inspiring. And Morgan is a little bit of a peek into that world for the older dudes in the band, you know? He's like a conduit. And now that I think about it, the New York scene was never that great for hard rock.
No.
So it wasn't that difficult for the few to find each other. But now there's some young bands I'm keeping my eye on, and it's cool. It's starting to happen.
I've kind of noticed that myself. A lot of bands out of Brooklyn and just in general around New York City. Yeah, there's a good scene coming out of there. And yeah, I grew up there myself, and there was nothing hard rock or metal really based. It was more hardcore of a punk scene, you know, that New York has always been about, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
I still like New York as a base. I like being close to Europe, and maybe as the globe shrinks, that is even more apparent.
Sure.
I feel like we're connected to England and Europe, where a lot of the, let's call it back then, the stoner audience kind of really came into life. You know, West Coast and Germany, Holland. So I think it circulates in New York. Maybe people are feeling it, or the fact that TP and our ilk have been around now for an entire generation.
Absolutely.
Also, you're Earthless, Monster Magnet are godfathers of the scene now. Before they were the upstarts.
I know.
Playing at CB's on a Tuesday. No one gave a shit.
Exactly. No, it's true. Atomic Bitchwax, another one, obviously. You guys, you know. Well, you know, let's talk about TP now. You mentioned it, you know, and you know, as I was saying, you know, Morgan can shred. And speaking of shredded, you know, I mean, you know, just let the people know out there that don't know, you are the owner and leader of TP Records, which is a legendary hard rock label out of New York for the last 30 years. I mean, stoner rock wouldn't be where it is today without a label like that. And although there are a bunch of labels these days that do focus on that 70s stoner doom metal sound, there's still one thing to me that sets you guys apart from the rest. From what I've concluded is, if you want to be considered to be on, you know, on TP roster, you got to be able to shred and really play your instrument, you know. And that's not a knock on the other labels or bands that might not have that type of skill set. But if you just look at the level of musicianship on TP, I mean, obviously you got yourself and Morgan with Mirror Queen, Dave Wheeler, as we talked about, Carousel, Limousine Beach, the guys from the Atomic Bitchwax, Isaiah Mitchell from Earthless, who's now with the Black Crows, Josh Landau from the Shrine. I can go on all day about these.
Donovan has a new record in the can finally.
Okay, and Donovan does too. Okay, excellent, fantastic.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just seems to me that you can't be a band that plays, you know, fuzzy punk laden stoner rock to be on a label like TP. You got to have a little bit more meat on the bones there. So talk about what you look for in an artist or band when you're looking to add to the TP roster.
Wait for the truck to go by.
Okay.
My house is kind of a construction zone, so I got no place to sit inside.
Okay, got it.
First, I got to give some props to the founder of TP, Tony Presato. He had some foresight. So we took over. It's me and Dave Sweetout from Witch pretty much running it now.
Okay.
I think we took over in the late 2000s. But Tony, he did Sleep, which isn't really showing, you know, heavy duty like classic guitar solos. But he also had the eye to catch Graveyard. So that's a good template, I think, for what we're looking for. And we're flying the flag now with more riffy bands, very guitar. I often say when we go to a festival, often the only guitar solos, 90% of them are from the TP bands that are there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The heavy rock doesn't exactly mean that anymore. That's probably fine, you know. But in our case, yeah, we like riffs, bands that are classic in that nature, but have a little more novel songwriting. They don't lean on the past, except for the Marshalls. Come on, why not?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Or the Oranges, as the case may be. But enough of a foot in the past, but not a slave to any kind of fashion. So the musicians tend to be roadworthy.
Mm-hmm.
They're showing their guitar chops and as a unit from the road. Rarely do we sign a band unseen, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But now but often it's referred to. Now there is a underground vibe, so a lot of referrals from other bands. Hey, these guys out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll try to throw them on a bill or something like that. Or if I'm at a festival, I'll make sure to haul my butt across the the grounds and catch a little bit of them. But generally, it's nothing that's too much style over substance. So a little bit of chops, right? A sense of song. Always helps when they're nice guys.
Sure.
Because most of the bands aren't in it for the money. So they got to be able to get along on the road without staying in fancy hotels or too many nightliners, you know?
Sure.
It's very underground. It's getting more so now, too. Record sales are shrinking. They just are.
Oh, yeah.
So the bands aren't getting any big advances from us. Hardly. Or probably any label.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So the road is important. So they got to be durable. You got to tell them they're cool. Too many times you see where a band gets to a point and then they break up right when they have the little brass ring. It's like you spent 20 years getting ready for what? To break up?
Yeah.
So I would try to keep an eye on that tendency and hope that it doesn't happen.
Okay, very cool. Well, you know,
not really sure what else to say about that.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well,
a lot of it's subjective, right?
Sure. Well, yeah, of course.
Either it kind of rocks you or else it doesn't.
Well, as a underground record label, no matter how big the city is, it's all underground. So the band's got to work together. This is a microcosm tonight. 3 different bands in the label from different places. 1 from the East Coast, 2 from the West Coast. Everybody travels a great distance to play together. They even share members. So we try to encourage that. The bands tour together, they play together. Sometimes we do showcases at foreign festivals to give that vibe that everyone is working together. It's a family vibe, dysfunctional members and all.
What I was going to say is, you know, I think one of the best qualities, too, about the label has to do with the fact that what you guys promote is that you have a very, you know, a familial vibe in there. It's a family vibe.
Sure.
And TP really is a place where you can, you know, not only just grow as an artist, you could thrive and spend your career on, you know, your bands and projects. I mean, certain artists have had multiple bands and projects that TP has supported and put out over the years. I mean, most recently, obviously, we've just been talking about Dave Wheeler, obviously. Of course, you know, you've got connections with the High Tone Son of a Bitch guys and the Callous members. They were previously, you know, about years ago, put out that great record. So talk about the label's philosophy, not only musically, but in terms of that family vibe that you guys are known for.
Yeah, for sure. Again, a lot of times the bands refer other bands to us. And there's also little scenes, maybe not so much in New York, but definitely when we had a lot of California bands, they interchanged members so much. It was mind-boggling. I couldn't keep track. I think it was 2017. With the help of the Dutch government, I think we brought like 6-7 bands over to Roadburn.
Okay.
And that was the San Diego takeover. So all the bands were from San Diego or Oceanside. And yeah, again, so much intermingling. It totally felt like a dysfunctional family. It was great. And then, you know, you're not looking for, it's not pop where if a band doesn't make it or whatever that is on this level, or you don't give up and drop it. So like Dave Wheeler, you know, Carousel, they gave it a shot for a couple of years, lost some members, came back. And then I think Outside Inside was more of a local band, not too many intentions to really take it on the road very much. But then when he came back from Limo Beach, like, hey, come, welcome back. You know, we'd love to do something. So hopefully no bridges ever get burned or people aren't too disappointed. I figure, and for hard rock, people tend to be lifers too, you know?
True.
Are they going to retire and become real estate? Well, maybe they might. I don't know. Turn to blues guys, you know, not really sure. So, yes. Yeah. So the same old faces, and which is great. And even on the promotional and the road side, now it's been the same entity's been hanging in there in Holland for Orange Factory, Roadburn people, bookers that we know across Europe, for example. Tone Deaf in the US has handled a lot of TP bands. It ends up being the same characters there too. So like an extended family, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. And then we often, for PR, it's not 100%, but we try to, if we don't keep someone on retainer, we tend to let the same person handle the bands over and over, unless it's something really out of left field, you know? If we put out more of a pop record, okay, maybe get something else. But because then they become more familiar with it isn't just a hire for 3 months. They get familiar with the vibe of the label and the commonalities between the bands. So you're right. It is very family, and it extends every direction. And I'm sure there's some tales to tell from the road. You don't want to hear what your misbegotten children are up to sometimes, right?
Sure.
And they don't want to know what the parents are up to.
That's true. No doubt, man. Well, the other thing too, I notice is that you very seldomly hear too many similarities with the bands on the roster. Every band really is unique and really has their own sound. I mean, obviously they're mostly 70s inspired hard rock, bands. But like I said, it pretty much ends there. When I hear Mirror Queen or The Shrine or, Lecherous Gaze or Witch or whoever, I mean, these are all very unique sounding bands. So how important is it too when you're signing these bands? Not only do they have a specific level of musicianship, but they also sound unique and different. They don't just sound like another typical stoner 70s inspired band.
Yeah. I mean, once again, usually the bands have a little bit of road underneath their belt, even sometimes an EP or something. So we kind of know it is a known entity. So we're not totally rolling the dice thinking that they're one dimensional. Oh, let's not even take a chance. Because you take a quick listen on a demo or something, it's hard to tell. But if you go see them live, at first blush, it might sound like just another kind of very, sludgy band or something. Wait, there's more to it, or let's say more kind of psych band, a Mystic Sunship, or I remember Volcano was one of my favorite recent releases, doing more of a Afro pop thing thrown in there with the stoner record. Excellent live, mind blowing. I wish they had kept going. So a lot of it is mixing in, a sense of something very appealing on the recording that you might get by referral or digging around. But live is usually what pulls together the whole package for us.
Okay.
And then you get to see the differences. You can see how the bands communicate on stage. Okay. How they separate from the pack or even from the past, right?
True. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, good point. Well, you're also really, Kenny, in a really unique situation, being, not only in a band that's on the label, but like I said, you're the owner of the label as well as being a musician. How do you separate or maybe delineate being, Kenny Sehgal from TP Records and being Kenny Kreiser from Mirror Queen, guitarist and vocals? How challenging is it going from being, one to the other, being a, music guy, musician, and then being a business owner, label owner guy?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that difficult. The underground label world has kind of shrank. We don't even have an office.
Okay.
So Dave from Witch, Dave Sweet Apple, that's as close as we have to an office because he does a lot of independent distribution for us. And so he has an office and a loading dock and storage up in Vermont.
Okay.
I hang out in New York. We have fulfillment guys for web stores in Berlin and in South Brooklyn. So you put it all together, it's kind of an office. So it's not the old, I was going to say 9 to 5. That's not quite rock and roll. It used to be 10 to 11 to 8.
Sure.
We don't even have that structure of at least this level of a record label. We farm a lot of stuff out, so the PR people, to me, they're practically employees, but they have their offices. And Mirror Queen, we're not a full-time band in that kind of way. We don't expect as much out of MQ as I would of a band that I signed.
Okay.
So we're a little older. New York is so hard to have for people to get time off and things like that.
Sure.
Maybe that's why that scene we're talking about has always been kind of rough for hard rock around here. you know, so we tried to tour twice a year, go to Europe once a year, always in the studio, always writing tunes. You know, we're a hard-working band. All during the lockdown, we practiced diligently, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't take a break at all.
Okay.
And then I have a couple other bands too that are only local.
Okay.
So mostly it's a matter of keeping a whole creative life going.
Sure.
Mirror Queen is part of it, and then the label, and Dave is actually really the office manager, because there's a lot of facets to the underground now, dealing with your distributor, web sales, which went up a lot during the pandemic. No bands were touring.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And I think I want to thank everyone that spent their share of their stimulus money at tprecords.com. The back catalog is important, right? At this point, I can't even count how many records we have, because some have been deleted or moved on to other labels, but probably 200 releases, you know, it's a shitload.
Wow.
So it's a big back catalog. That's part of it too. So I guess the way we kind of managed it is, and Dave is in Witch also, you know, he's in one of our main bands. So you maintain your own band, try to pace the number of releases we have per year, even in non-pandemic years, maybe have 5 or 6 records that are full-fledged. That is with the LP and all that. During the pandemic, we bumped up the, I call it the Annex, which is more digital and odds and sods and reissues and things like that. That really doesn't take any production work, and you don't rely on the band to be on the road for those.
Sure.
So we've bumped that up during the pandemic.
Okay.
So it's more like adjusting, so you don't have to work as hard in a way. It's about keeping a big balance, you know. When it gets busier is when there's a big thing happening, let's say Desert Fest or Roadburn, when a lot of bands have to be in one place at the same time, syncing up with the PR, make sure they got records to sell, and dealing with 30, 40 different people.
Sure. Yeah. Well, now that we're starting to see, unfortunately, once again, we're starting to see some of these tours getting canceled. You know, is that now? Of course, I'm sure that's a concern too. I mean, but at least do you feel like you've got almost sort of a blueprint now? If things do, of course, get locked down again, you already know what you're going to kind of do to get through it again.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, right now the biggest headache really is the vinyl production.
Yeah.
So if it's a miracle, it takes 5 months, but it can take 6 to 8. So so it's hard to plan around that, and then the bands are invariably disappointed that, hey, here's our shiny new record. Well, now add 8 months on top of that. That 3 months we already needed as lead time. So it's almost like your brand new material will be a year old by the time you get to play on it.
It's crazy. I know, man. Well, you know, just talk about some positive news here. Well, just some things here, getting off that. I mean, one of the things I got to give, you know, like you and Dave credit for, really, since you guys, you know, took over and started running TP, is that you really been able to keep the label steady, consistent, really, I think, as strong as ever. I mean, you didn't come in, you didn't make any drastic changes. And if anything, you've added to its legacy. You've made it stronger with the signings we've been seeing over the last decade plus. I mean, talk a little bit about what you've done as, you know, as the guys that are running TP ship now, to not only keep its original legacy for when it started 30 years ago, but also how you've been able to really add to it without making any changes to the philosophy or the musical direction at all to TP.
Yeah. Well, I think it's mostly we operate in a larger universe now, where, let's say, late 90s when TP kind of started. What else was there? Man's Ruin. I mean,
that was it.
You know, and now there's hundreds of bands. So even some of our bigger hitters, Earthless, you know, back then, Sleep and all that, and they've gone to bigger labels, Graveyard. Back then, the bigger labels when they cared. So I think we can actually be proud of that. So I don't look at it as if we're a stepping stone label or a farm team. You know what I mean? It just proves that our taste is right. So, so that was a lot of people, you know, look at these kind of bands, which is great. It means that the underground scene is healthy. The same goes for the festivals. Before there was one or none, and now there's loads. Now there's 20 in Europe alone, any given spring or summer. So, if anything, we're actually kind of going more along our personal taste, I would say.
Okay.
Mythic Sunship is a great example. You know, we hadn't really done They're kind of a prog, mostly instrumental band. But it fit into, that was actually a band that Dave saw at Roadburn, which kind of proves my point, I think, that I'm slowly getting to, is that the definition of underground heavy rock has expanded. So has our taste, and we're getting older too, you know?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And it's so nichey, but yet I don't think you need to be 100% in a niche. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We might be done. We're not doing a whole lot of doom bands anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think even those Skull records that we did, they had moved. To me, they're almost like a heavy rock band, not so doomy as Trouble even was back in there. You know?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So, yeah. If anything, I would say we're a little past. We're not really doing too much doom anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, whatever grabs their fancy. You know, you said nice guitar work. If anything gets a little intentional, I like to grab one or two more East Coast bands. I feel like we're a little underrepresented. Maybe a few more female artists if you're out there.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I don't solicit demos. Lay it on us, you know.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think all that is resolving itself. There's so many good bands now. I just came back from Desert Fest, Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
Music was spilling out of my ears. So many great bands from Switzerland and England and Scandinavia, and gender was practically equally represented. A lot of guitar, but there was some other instrumentation happening. A great band I saw from Greece that was using like exotic folk instrumentation, you know, things like that. So I think the heavier underground is expanding so much that maybe one day New York will catch up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, they had Desert Fest there this year, so that's a big, you know, start. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, how big do you think having something like that is now? Because now it's finally, I mean, it started obviously with Psycho Fest. You know, you've got even Ripple Fest. They get their, you know, that label does their thing down in Texas. So we are finally starting to see a lot of festivals for this heavy rock stuff, which for years we only saw happen in Europe. So it is nice to finally see here happen in the States, you know?
Yeah. I mean, they always had like Maryland Doom Fest and things like that. But that was definitely for the heavy end, not as didn't have the European sensibility or the new expanded version of the underground. Psycho, that's bigger than maybe anything New York can pull off, I think.
Sure. Let's morph into something totally different now too. So yeah.
Ideal place to do it, Las Vegas. There's hotel rooms, things like that. That's what's tough about New York is getting here and stay. Yeah, it is prohibitive. But Desert Fest is a good size. It started off with a nice bang, I thought, in 19, and then just couldn't do the follow up. And I'm sure they're going to do another one. We helped. We were part of it a little bit, a very modicum of helping with the planning. So I know a little what they're up to, and I'm pretty sure there'll be another edition next year. Yeah,
yeah. I hope so too. I mean, I guess I just hope they continue with these festivals because it's been huge for here in the States. You know, it's just great to see. You know, we haven't seen it for years. So just getting back, Kenny, now to Mirror Queen. I mean, what's the plan now with the band to promote the record? Are you guys going to, play some shows? Obviously, I know you got, shows lined up, locally. Yeah. Anything you're planning to do in terms of any festivals or any kind of touring or anything?
Looks like there's a little tour happening early August, just to Chicago and back.
Okay.
And then just going to gear up for Europe. Nothing solidified, but now that unless another, pandemic keeps continuing, there's some talk about what to do in Europe next year. So probably late spring, and go there for a month or so. Maybe with a whole bunch of teepee bands, keep the family vibe going. We've done that before. We throw a bunch of people on a nightliner and have like a roving showcase, basically.
Very cool, nice.
Yeah. And so I think that's probably most likely what will happen in early spring 2023 for Mary Queen, and who knows who else on the label. And then, as I said, we were diligent during lockdown. Me and Morgan pretty much had the next record written.
Really? Wow. Damn.
and most of it's recorded. And that was,
wow.
and the record came out, what, 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
So that's how it goes, you know?
Wow. Yeah. That's great, man.
Yeah. We're not having little discussions every practice, how many new tunes to include in the set when we haven't even toured on the new record yet.
Jeez, yeah.
But as I said, the songs are now 2 years old for us, you know, and every band goes through that.
Yeah.
I think they need to be.
You're probably itching to kind of do some new stuff just because, like you said, it's been there for 2 years already. Yeah.
Yeah. But we'll play one new tune on tour, I think. Again, look forward to going to Chicago and back.
Okay.
Our booking agent just had a little baby girl, so I haven't heard from her in a week. But I'm pretty sure we're going to Chicago and back in a month.
Sweet.
And,
very nice.
Yeah. But just keep them busy, you know. And Morgan is also in multiple bands.
Okay.
Mirror Queen's, you know, our number one band for each person. But now the record is out, get some touring. We're going to pay a little bit of attention to our other bands too, not to the detriment, you know, but it is the bigger picture. I have a power pop band, which I love a lot.
Okay.
It kind of helps hone the arrangement ideas. And then we have an acoustic band as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
So then you get to think about vocal harmonies and how traditional you really want to be. So it's all cool. Big ball of wax. Yeah.
Well, you're not short of doing anything of being bored. I should say that between the label and your bands, it looks like you got your plate full all the time, man. Yeah.
And I do want to put a plug in on some of the things we were hoping bands were going to be working on new material. I think they will. So Witch was doing some recording lately. It's been a while for them.
Okay.
You know, they live in not only different time zones, they live in different hemispheres, you know.
Yeah.
One guy in Australia, a lot of West Coast, and then the rest East Coast. So they did I think 9 days of basic track recording just after Roadburn. So, and then as I mentioned earlier, Donovan has a record in the can finally.
All right. Fantastic.
I am beyond stoked for that. They're just one of my favorite bands, no matter what.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And they're enough of a perfectionist. I've heard the tracks; they're great, but they don't polish it to death. They keep it so raw and great, and fluent. So look for them.
Okay.
And I'm sure Bitchwax is working on. Those guys are the most prolific record band going, you know, as far as records.
Phenomenal.
It's almost like clockwork. Every year and a half, they write a new one. Every 2 years, a new record comes out, you know?
Yeah, which is great because I know for a while they did take some time off there, you know, some years back. Yeah. And it's good to see them putting out music consistently because they're one of a kind band, man, especially live. There's nothing like watching those guys.
Riffomatic. And for them, it's usually a matter of scheduling around Monster Magnet. And whenever they can, they jump on it and they make the most of it. And then my last bit of news is maybe the Skull. Nothing too concrete to talk about, but after the unfortunate death of Eric Wagner, they reconvened. He had written already a lot of lyrics, and they had new material ready for a third record on Teepee, and then they did a birthday tribute in Chicago last month, and it seems like there's some traction to turn into a real project.
Oh, okay.
So I'd say people keep an eye on that, and that's pretty much the whole world of Teepee, you know,
all right.
off the top of my head. So
nice.
Not staying idle. Yeah.
Sure. No, never. Not Teepee, man. Well, I appreciate you giving us that news. A lot of fans will appreciate to hear that. So once again, Inviolate's a new full length from New York's Mirror Queen, out now on Teepee Records. So Kenny, where can the viewers and listeners go to check out, you know, the band's music, merch, and just to keep up with the band in general, and as well as for Teepee as well?
Yeah, head to the Teepee Records website.
Okay.
That's the best place. Another pandemic project was someone is building us out a really beautiful professional Mirror Queen website, but that'll be ready soon. But we're keeping stuff pretty consolidated at Teepee. And again, our web store, we keep the prices fair and the shipping fair. That's why we keep a lot of stock in Berlin. So you have to pay $30 shipping for a $24 record for our European fans. So pretty much everything, tprecords.com, I'm sure.
Okay.
Everybody can find what they want.
Great.
Yeah. Or go catch a band on the road. They need the money.
It's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, we do it all the time. We definitely promote people going out, seeing the shows, buying records, because if people don't support the bands, then I mean, this stuff's going to go away. So it takes a village for everyone to kind of contribute to, you know, the whole hard rock community. And yeah, fantastic. Well, once again, Inviolate, the new full length from Mirror Queen. And Kenny, man, we appreciate you coming on, talking everything TP and Mirror Queen, man. And you know, thanks again. We'll hope to see you on the road soon with the band. You know,
indubitably. Yeah, thanks a lot. It was a great chat. Thanks for having me, and thanks to everyone for listening.
Yeah,
appreciate
awesome,
it.
Man.